So welcome everybody. I am going to talk a bit about the biographical poem before giving you my 6 tips for writing a poem about a woman from Ohio. So you can see my recent work here. All of these have elements of the autobiographical poem, and today I'm going to talk about 2 people I've written about. I'm really intrigued by. The first is the artist Georgia O'Keeffe, and the second is the writer Mary Wollstonecraft. Before I go into my own work and give you a few examples, I want to talk a little bit about the biographical poem and recommend some books to read. The first is by Linda Beard's The Ghost Trio, and it's a book set in the 18th century from the point of view of people who were real, historical figures. Josiah Wedgwood was the owner of the famous English pottery works. And Erasmus Darwin, who's a poet, scientist, and grandfather of Charles Darwin, and related to Wedgwood, in fact. And she also adds an imaginary person called James Whitfield, who is a miner employed by Wedgwood. And through the lives of these 3 men, she looks at the society of the time, thinks about their relationships and their experiences. It's a wonderful book. The second book I want to recommend is called What the Water Gave Me, Poems After Frida Kahlo by Pascal Petit. And this is a book which is all about the life of the incredible artist Pascal Petit, and about her art, her life, things that happened to her, all the tumultuous events of her life. And it's a really wonderful book again. Now, the third book I wanted to recommend is called Viva Bartali, and it's by Damien Walford Davis, and it's about a famous cyclist, Bartali of the title. He won the Tour de France and many cycling races, and he was a very popular figure in Italy, but also very significant because during World War II, he actually helped to smuggle papers to Jewish citizens who were trying to escape fascist Italy. And so really fascinating character. And the book is all about his life growing up in a very poor background, but becoming a brilliant cyclist, and also a man of great honor who helped a lot of people to escape a really nasty situation. So I just wanted to flag up those books as great examples. But one of the people I'm really interested in writing about is Georgia O'Keeffe, who was an American modernist painter and draftsman whose career spanned 7 decades, and whose work was very unique and individual. And she herself was a very trailblazing woman. She has been called the mother of American modernism, and she had international recognition. She's often known for her paintings of natural forms like flowers or desert landscapes, which were drawn from the places that she lived in. Really wonderful person. And my obsession with her started when I read this book, My Faraway One, which is letters between her and her beloved Alfred Stieglitz, who was an American photographer, a modern art promoter. They fell in love and they wrote these wonderful, wonderful letters to each other in which we learn so much about them. And I absolutely love this collection. And I ended up writing some poems based on the letters, and also on photographs that Stieglitz took of Georgia O'Keeffe. This one he took of her hands on a skull, quite a gothic kind of image. And in a way, they're found poems, because I try to write in the style that Georgia O'Keeffe wrote, and she used loads of dashes. She loved that. And this poem was called Hand and Skull. This hand reaching for warmth. Does anyone ever find it? This hand finding only bone reaches to tell you good night. And for a minute, I feel like if this poem succeeds, hopefully I've managed to capture her voice and the things that she used to say to Stieglitz in their letters, which was often trying to find comfort and happiness. A wonderful, wonderful woman. And this is her later in life. when she was still painting and creating marvelous artwork. The other woman I'm really interested in writing about is called Mary Wollstonecraft. You may know her as the mother of Mary Shelley, who wrote the brilliant book Frankenstein. But she is fascinating in her own right because at the end of the 18th century, she wrote a book called A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which was really one of the first Western feminist tracts or kind of setting out of feminist ideas. And she's an incredible person with a very tumultuous life again, who tried to uh, live life to the fullest. Really wonderful person. And unfortunately, not everybody liked the way that Mary Wollstonecraft conducted herself. And later on, Horace Walpole described her as a hyena in petticoats, which is created in this artwork by Annalie Tout. Wonderful, wonderful piece of work. And so I ended up writing a poem about her name, Wollstonecraft, which is also kind of playing on the fact that Horace Walpole described her as a hyena. And when he did that, he was kind of trying to undermine her ideas and the sensible things she was saying about women having the vote, having human rights and things like that. And so this is that poem that I wrote. A family name from the Saxons, Wulfston or Wolfstone, set unusually with craft, referring for West Saxons not to a skill, but physical strength and might, the power of the Wolfstone, a name that may derive from the Vikings. This name, redolent of Wilfengiotas, wolfish thoughts, feminine in nature, of wild wolfers, wolves that slaughter in battle, of the devil himself who wears a wolf's head, or the wolf who lay in grandmother's bed, of King Howel Dda, whose price for a wolf was 8 pence, and who paid Saxon tributes in wolf skins. What can a she-wolf do but survive, no matter the names that seek to make animal and woman less than human? So this is kind of pushing back against Horace Walpole and saying, actually, she was an incredibly powerful and brilliant woman, and all that is bound up in her name, which has this whole history behind it, the power of the Wolfstone. And that's what she has in her writing and in the things she tried to say and do. So I could talk a lot more about Mary Wollstonecraft, but what I want to do instead is to give you 6 tips for writing biographical poems. So let's have a look at what we have here. The first one is, could you in a poem capture an intense life moment of an Ohio woman? And you could research the biography of a specific Ohio woman and imagine a pivotal moment in her life. It could be a peaceful time, a high stakes decision, or the realization of a goal. You could write your poem in the first person, expressing her thoughts and feelings as if you were her. Write a poem as if you're experiencing it through her eyes, capturing her emotions in a vivid stream of consciousness style. I was trying to think of examples and I thought, hey, what about Simone Biles, who is from Columbus, a wonderful athlete, winning 6 gold medals at the 2016 Olympics? That must have been an incredible moment and something I hugely admire. What would that have been like? And there's some interesting documentaries out about Simone Biles if you want to find out more about her on Netflix. There's loads of stuff on the internet as well. You can find out more about her story. Another idea is to use letters. If you can find any letters that your particular woman wrote, study them carefully and write a poem as if it were a letter from her to someone important in her life, capturing her style and maybe her mindset, like I was trying to do with Georgia O'Keeffe. Catherine Wright, who is the brother of the famous aviators, the Wright brothers, wrote a lot of letters, and often she was organizing for the brothers, sorting out various matters for their career, and campaigning because she was also a suffragette. She's actually the person who inspired this whole project. So I'd love to see some poems about her and thinking back to her legacy, which is sometimes forgotten. Another tip might be to describe a photograph or painting of a particular Ohio woman. Look closely at any images of her, noticing details like her expression, the direction of her gaze, and her body language. You could write a poem imagining what she's thinking or experiencing in that moment. Write about your impressions of her and what seeing her brings up for you in relation to your own life. I love this photograph of Ohioan Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison and her two sons. I think it's such a lovely portrait of their closeness and a really beautiful moment captured in time. Toni Morrison, an interesting writer because um, she often wrote about how motherhood was something that's very integral to her and something that didn't necessarily hold her back because sometimes we know women are very busy and it's hard being a mother and a writer or doing anything really. And she saw that for sure, but she also talked about the positives of it, which is great for all of us moms out there to remind us of the things that motherhood brings to us. You could also explore a family tree or social connections. Um, Write a poem about her relationships, perhaps as a conversation with a family member, friend, or colleague, or as a description of her family tree. And that could be a biological family tree or a family tree that's chosen. I was thinking about the Ohioan Ruth Simpson's role in the first lesbian civil rights union in the United States, and how she played a big role in the emerging community, and that involved a lot of organising at the time. So it's just intriguing to look at people within the web of the community or the family in which they existed. Another idea could be to focus on key relationships. Consider someone who played a significant role in a woman's life, whether supportive or maybe even obstructive. Write from that person's perspective or as a poem addressing them, expressing how they impacted her journey. Um, in the photograph here, we have Doris Day and her dear friend, the actor Rock Hudson. A lovely picture of them both. They had a lifelong friendship and just really captures something about them. Another photograph, actually, that we could write a poem from. Another idea is to start with something they said. Take a line from a quotation and go from there. What does it spark for you? Try and do some free writing where you just write down whatever comes into your mind and see if that brings any fruitful thoughts for you. Let's look at some things, in fact, that various Ohio women have said. Take, for example, Eileen Heckart, the actress, who, upon entering the auditorium as a nominee on Oscar night, she did win an Oscar, by the way. She said, I just hope they pan the camera on me once. I paid a lot of money for this dress. I want my mother in Columbus, Ohio, to be able to see it. It's kind of funny to think about Columbus being mentioned at the Oscars and the glamour of it, the old Hollywood kind of feel of it. And how do we feel about that now? What are our thoughts about it? There are all kinds of things that could ping off of a quotation or directions that you could take it in. Yes, and this is another quotation by Ruby Dee, who says that the greatest gift is not being afraid to question. What a lot of wisdom in that, and so much to think about. There are many directions again that we could take that in and end up writing a poem. Amina Robinson, very own Columbus artist, had a very beautiful quotation. This is taken from an interview. You must take time with the work, with the lives of our ancestors, with the lives of those who are already here, she said. The life of the community is very, very sacred. What a beautiful opening for thinking about community and the past and how we think about those legacies of ancestors. I think that's a really ripe quotation for exploring, working through, and perhaps writing a poem from. Another quotation that you might find interesting is by Celeste Ng, a writer from Ohio. Celeste says, the things that go unsaid are often the things that eat at you, whether because you didn't get to have your say or because the other person never got to hear you and really wanted to. There's so much wisdom in just this short quotation that I think it could take you in all kinds of directions regarding things to write about. So I hope that this inspires you to think of your own ways into writing about women of Ohio. Thank you so much for listening. Um, Please contact us at womenofohio@gmail.com if you have any queries. I'm really looking forward to seeing your work.